I have a faint memory of Goblin Slayer premiering back in 2016 or so. The discourse was mostly filled with controversy due to the assault scenes, which then created an immediate divide between those that dismissed it as a cheap and insensitive Berserk clone that was doing it all wrong, and those that said it was an anime for real rugged men with hair in their chest. Like with most things, both sides swung too far in the opposite direction. And like with most things, they were both kind of wrong, because Goblin Slayer is a working class hero. He's the voice of the voiceless. He's a folktale, a campfire story. It's a very high and mighty statement, I know, but let me explain, alright? Jeez, you're always on my back, dude. Like, okay, chill out. So like most people, I dismiss Goblin Slayer as an edgy fantasy show. I got the TRPG aspect. I got the dungeon crawler aspect. I said, okay, this is just a guy that wanted to make something related to his hobbies. I was mildly amused by season 1, then turned off by the movie, and I moved on to other anime. But the idea of Goblin Slayer never left my brain. Every now and then, it popped back up, and I'd faintly remember that rusty helmet with the signature red eye shining through. So naturally, when I went on my light novel reading spree, I eventually stumbled across the series once again. And this time, it was in its original form, unaffected by poor animation and truncated storylines for the sake of a 12-episode season. The first volume was standard fare, kind of what I expected. But as the series went along and we went through more and more episodic adventures with Goblin Slayer and his friends, I began to notice the patterns. The first was the narration. The anime told us this was Dungeons & Dragons the anime, but the light novel took it to a whole nother level with the Western fantasy-inspired narration. It was obvious we're supposed to be looking at this from a top-down view, observing the tiny ants that are Goblin Slayer and friends as they banter and fight. The camera would then close in on the action during moments of intensity. When all hope is lost and the party is almost defeated, we get a zoom in on Goblin Slayer as his neurons fire up and he stops fate from closing its steel grip on them. The second thing I noticed was that this is a survival series through and through. Most of his adventures revolve around limited resources and limited power. Even a horde of small fry can be dangerous if your shield breaks or your knife loses its edge. There's always an established amount of everything, from healing spells to arrows to even knives or rocks. The climax of the story usually relies on Goblin Slayer using, like the gravity of an elevator to defeat a giant interdimensional demon hand or something like that. Yeah, that does actually happen, and it's actually pretty sick, I'm not gonna lie. It was a pretty hype moment. The third thing I noticed, and some may get mad at me for phrasing it this way, it might seem insensitive, but Goblin Slayer is supposed to be a little autistic, He's supposed to be a little neurospicy, a little neurodivergent, and this is no offense, I'm a little autistic too, so I'm not saying that as something that's bad. But yeah, like the trauma from having his whole family taken from him by goblins, the Survivors Guild, the overprotectiveness he feels for his childhood friend, the only emotional connection he has from his past, it all gets mixed up in a trauma blender that produces the man now known as Goblin Slayer. A grown man that misses every social cue from those around him, does not care for a personal life or hobbies, and is obsessed with killing goblins at whatever the cost. Or is it? Is it at whatever the cost? See, this is where the series got me. Any way you look at it, Goblin Slayer is supposed to be about an angry, violent man that wants nothing but to kill goblins. The anime sure portrayed him that way, the memes too, and the light novel, that's the big hype moments, right? But Goblin Slayer does not kill goblins just because he hates them. He kills them because no one else will. And the people the goblins target can't. Throughout the novels, there's all these little vignettes of people wanting anyone to come take care of this goblin problem that no one seems to care about. Yeah, they're just goblins, but they're stronger and more agile than an untrained human. Yeah, they're not an immediate threat to all humanity, but they're a threat to their immediate family and neighbors. And so when all hope is lost, when no one seems to care about X or Y small village or rookie adventurer party, along comes Goblin Slayer to do his job quickly and efficiently. You see, Goblin Slayer doesn't just hate goblins, he's also keenly empathetic to the plight of the powerless. He was the son of a poor village family, and no adventurer saved them when they got cruelly massacred by the goblins. So his obsession isn't to kill goblins first, ask questions second. It's save lives first, kill goblins second, and don't ask questions because those two things are all he cares about. He doesn't care about anything else. His moniker, Goblin Slayer, is made fun of by ambitious adventurers that want to make it big, but is revered in the outskirts of the country where he's the only one likely to venture out and take out what to these people is a very real threat at almost no cost, in fact, sometimes free of charge. The goblins are his natural enemy because they rely on capturing vulnerable girls in order to reproduce, and so they seek out out the powerless and poor, the ones that do not have the strength or resources to get rid of them. So regardless of where Goblin Slayer kills goblins, his extermination of them is always a net positive to these vulnerable people. Hence, the folk hero comparison. This all clicked for me in an unconventional manner because I was reading a volume and Cowgirl, his childhood friend, was musing about how sometimes she daydreams about being a real refined high-class lady that could wear pretty dresses and frolic around. But alas, she was used to farm life and her mannerisms and talk prohibited her from feeling that special and fragile. The excerpt had nothing to do with anything, but it seemed so real and empathetic. It was a thought that anybody who is not well off has had at some point in their lives. Oh, I'm not from that. I could never even imitate that. My place is down here. And to me, it showed that the author has positioned Goblin Slayer to be that hero that rose from nothing and has always put the weak and vulnerable over power and riches. There's also a volume where we find out Goblin Slayer loves Vikings. Like, yeah, I'm not being insensitive by calling this dude autistic, alright? The dude loves Vikings. But yeah, there's this adventure they go on to Viking land, and it's the first time Goblin Slayer is excited because the tall tales of Vikings are what shaped his childhood. And once more, there's these faint traces of the aspirations he's chosen to leave behind in order to fulfill his duty as the hero of the powerless. Now, I will just briefly mention that the series does use sexual violence a fair bit as dramatic touchpoints. Sword Maiden and Noble Fencer are both characters that suffer from it and manifest their trauma in fear and anger respectively. These fears are then honed into strength the same way Goblin Slayer did, and his resolve and unwavering march towards it is a touchpoint that then empowers them to do the same. So there's a purpose to an extent, but I'm not going to justify it. Like, I don't have the right to tell you if you should or shouldn't be uncomfortable with those depictions of violence, right? So yeah, Goblin Slayer surprised me. The image presented in the anime community way back when was so off kilter on both sides. Like, he's not Guts from Berserk, and he's also not supposed to be like a macho alpha guy. He's a very autistic man that loves killing goblins and loves saving people, and that's all he cares about. And he's going to do it at the cost of whatever it takes, even if it means defying the gods. That's where the slogan comes from, right? He doesn't let anybody roll the dice. He doesn't let anybody who is supposed to be a victim fall to victimhood. I feel like that's where the essence of that slogan comes from. He doesn't let anybody roll the dice. What have we been told about tragedies that happened every day, right? Oh, that's how we can't do anything about it. That's just how things are. You should just deal with it, right? Things are burning down. People are suffering, but this is just how it is for us. Meanwhile, the rich get richer, etc., etc. I'm not about to get political over here. I'm getting riled up. Goblin Slayer's riling me up. You guys hear this in my voice? I'm getting riled up by Goblin Slayer. But yeah, that's where that slogan comes from. He doesn't let anybody roll the dice because why should he? Right? He's gonna stand for the powerless, and he's gonna tell them they don't deserve this, just like he didn't deserve what happened to him. It's great. I love it. Check it out if you haven't, and if you have, hey, we're in the same club, right? I love it. Have a good one, guys. I don't really like the video. I'm turning into a YouTuber more and more by the day, so I guess I'm just gonna say go ahead and like the video if you can, if you made it to the end. All right, bye. I'm sorry for rambling so much. Bye.